Let's talk about 12 ways to keep conversations going on dates. I know that a lot of guys, and introverted guys in particular, can struggle about, on what to talk about on dates, or what to ask next, or what to bring up next when the conversation comes to a stop. And I know as an introvert myself, I used to struggle with this so much. I wouldn't know, what should I ask next? What do I talk about next? And then obviously it would be a turnoff for the girl. And girls want you to be able to carry these conversations. They want you to essentially lead the conversations in most cases. And so that's very important for us to, as guys, to be able to know what to talk about and how to pivot in situations where we may not know what to talk about next, and just kind of keep that going. So we're going to talk about these 12 ways right now, and stick till the end, because I'm also going to give you a 13th bonus tip that if all else fails, this one is going to save you not only on the date where you bring it up, but you could also bring it up across dates as you go. So this is going to be very good. And also I'm going to give you 6 things of what not to do and not to talk about on dates to keep that attraction going. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So number 1, we want to ask open-ended questions. So I'm sure you heard this a lot, and it's very important because we don't want to have answers coming from her, if possible, that are yes or no. That just kind of stops the conversation, and then you're like, okay, what do I ask next? So if it's open-ended, as an example, instead of, oh, you're from New York, or rather, are you from New York? So we want to avoid something like that. It's going to respond to yes or a no. You can rephrase it as, where are you from? That's just an easy example, and I'm sure you can come up with these on your own. So I won't go too much into that, because this is pretty common on conversations, on keeping conversations going, is asking open-ended questions. So number 2, we want to make an observation about her and ask her about it. So if you notice that she's wearing a ring, for example, you can ask her about that ring and say, oh, that's a cool ring. Where did you get it? Or tell me about it. Something like that. So you could do the same thing with anything that she's wearing. She's wearing kind of interesting shirt, a bright shirt or whatever it may be, interesting pants, cool shoes, earrings, anything like that. Anything that she's wearing, you could ask her about it. And then, and that's just going to keep things going from there, and just naturally progress from there on whatever you're asking about. Number 3, we want to do cold reads. So that means we want to make guesses about her. And this doesn't have to be anything like that you suspect, right? That she's, for example, from New York or from a particular place. You could just simply throw it out there, even if it doesn't make sense. It's just about making conversation fun, opposed to being in interview mode. So, like I said, as an example of where she's from, instead of asking, where are you from? You could say, you're from New York, aren't you? Or you're from Texas, aren't you? Or I have a feeling you're from Europe. Am I right about that? Something like that. So in a more fun way, you can just make guesses about her. Even it doesn't have to make sense. It's just, again, a fun way to get to know each other. Number 4, you want to tell her something about you. So you can kind of tell her something about you in relationship to something that she's saying. That would probably be the easiest thing. So for example, if she says that she grew up in Denver, Colorado, and you've been there, then when she's finished talking about growing up in Denver and whatever she's talking to you about, you can say, oh yeah, by the way, I actually went to Denver last year for a 1-week vacation, and I did this, I did that. So you can tell her something about you in relationship to something that she is talking about. Okay. Number 5, you want to compliment her, but I want to be careful with compliments because we only want to do about 1 compliment per date. Most guys are going to go crazy with the compliments about her eyes, about her hair, how beautiful she looks. And this is, for the most part, it can be flattering to girls, but in the subconscious mind, it can be a turn off. And eventually she will lose interest because most guys are complimenting her and she's getting validation from you. And instead, we want to be a little bit more genuine in trying to get to know her first as a person, not being all about looks. So with compliments, we want to go light on that. We want to say something like, we can compliment again. We want to be careful about body compliments. So we want to try to stay away from that. We can say something about what she's wearing, about her shirt, about her ring, or that you like her necklace, where she got it, that you like something that she's wearing. Again, trying to stay away from body if possible. So that is complimenting her. You could also compliment her on her personality, for example, as well. So it doesn't have to be about things that she's wearing necessarily, okay? So before I go to the next one, if you're liking this video, if you think it's going to be helpful for you, it will be helpful for me if you like and if you subscribe to this channel. That way I can, YouTube keeps recommending this content to other people, and I can see that what I'm doing is working and people are liking this content, and therefore it's going to motivate me to make more videos. So if this is interesting to you, if you think it's going to work, if you think this is awesome, whatever it may be, like and subscribe so that it tells me that you like this and I'm going to make more. So with that out of the way, let's go to number 6. We want to tease her. So with teasing, we want to be careful, and we don't want to tease her about anything about her body. Again, we want to stay anything away from her body. Just like we don't want to tease her about her nose or about her eyes or about her butt or her body, nothing like that. We can do something just as I have another video out there about teasing girls that I put out about a week or 2 ago. But in short, you could tease her about things like, especially on the first date, you can break up with her. You can be like, she can just tell you something like she's from New York, right? Or wherever she's from. You could be like, oh my gosh, my mom warned me about girls from New York. But I guess we'll keep going and see where this goes. But you want to say it in a teasing way, not in a serious way, in a playful tone. You could also tease her about, you could also do, again, I just created a video on push-pull, flirting, I believe last weekend, so check that out. So that's basically giving a compliment and then pushing her away. Showing interest in her, but then showing disinterest. So that's something like, you know what? You are cute, but I feel like you're trouble. I'm not sure about you yet. So there's many different ways to tease and flirt girls. So check out that video. I'll put it in the cards right here for you to check that out. But there's many different ways to tease a girl. And also, number 7, you want to play a game. And in particular, these are games that allow for playful touching and appropriate touching. So we're talking about things like arm wrestling, thumb wars, playing palm reader, right? You could grab her hand and say, yo, you know what? By the way, I'm a palm reader. Let me see if we're going to get along. And then check out her hand. And then again, you could tease her about it and be like, oh crap, I don't think it's going to work out. I got to go. And kind of throw that tease in there too. So you could play hot hands, games that you've played when you were in kindergarten, right? So you're probably familiar with that, right? Where you hold your hands like this, the other person on top, and then you try to smack them like they're supposed to take them away. So games like that, you could always challenge her to say, you know what? Let's play a game of Thumb Wars. I bet I could beat you. Come on, let's go. So you just throw it in randomly, right? It doesn't have to make sense with what's going on, right? So that's playing games, and then you can make conversation out of that. So that's, you could tease her with that too. Like, oh my gosh, you really suck at this. You could say something like that, even though she's obviously winning, right? So that's fun. Number 8, you want to change the subject. So you can use this anytime. So whenever, even when things come to a stop and you don't know what to talk about, you don't know like if you should keep going with this subject, you could just think of something and change the subject. And one of my favorite ways to change the subject is using the phrase, oh, by the way, and then boom. That makes it sound like you're not going to talk about what you've been talking about last. It's a whole new thread in the conversation. So that's my favorite way to doing it is, oh, by the way, have you seen this movie? Oh, by the way, have you been to this place? Oh, by the way, I did this last year. Have you done that? Anything like that. Okay. And number 9, we want to talk about the past, present, and or future on any topics that come up. So with this strategy, if she brings up something about a current tense, like maybe something she's doing right now or something she plans to do in the future, you could bring it to a different tense and bring it to the past, for example. Or if she's talking about the future that she wants to do something in the future, you could ask her about the present tense or the past. So let me give you an example. Let's say that she says that she is taking a class in school and she loves it, right? So that's present tense, right? She's talking about the class, she loves it, whatever it may be. Then you could take that into the past tense and talk about her favorite class growing up in kindergarten, in high school. So you're taking that same concept, that same idea of a favorite class right now, that she's going through right now, and ask her about that in the past. You could do this with anything. And also you could do it in the future, right? You could say, okay, so what other classes are you going to take next? Or rather something like sticking to the topic of classes, to the same example. What class are you going to take next? What do you think is going to be your next favorite class? Something along those lines. Let me think if I can think of another example on using past, present, future. So on travel, for example. Let's say that she says she traveled. So we're going to start with the past. She traveled, let's say, to Europe last year. Then you can talk about the future, right? Okay, where are you planning on traveling next? Right? So there you go. Anything they bring up, you could always think about the tenses, and that'll give you more ideas on what to ask next. Number 10, you can use callbacks. So a lot of guys think that, oh, I already asked this, about work or about school or about travel, so I can't ask about that anymore. I already asked her about that. No, you could always come back to it and dig more. So if she already, for example, earlier in the date talked to you about where she traveled, right? Or even on another date, maybe on the previous date, she told you about where she traveled, you could call that back and say, oh, you know what? Earlier you said that you went to Europe. Or, you know what? Last weekend when we went out, you said you went to Europe. You could always dig more and say, well, where was your favorite place in Europe? Or how long were you there? Or, you could just follow up from a different thread and bring it back and ask more about it. So just because something was brought up already before doesn't mean you can't bring it back and talk about it more. So number 11, you want to relate to her. So if she's talking about something that you can relate to, You could also say something like, oh, that reminds me. So if she's talking about, let's say her job, whatever she does, she's an accountant, for example, and she's just talking about her job and how much she likes it or not like it, or about the schooling that she had to go through. And let's say that you genuinely have been interested in accounting or are taking a class or anything you can relate to. You could also say, oh, well, that reminds me, you know what? I actually been wanting to take a class as well. Or that reminds me, I've also been interested in that field, but ultimately I didn't think it was for me. So I always like to start with, oh, that reminds me. And that can keep the conversation going and throw in a little bit about yourself in there. And number 12, I love this one. Tell me more. So whenever she talks about something and it's a little bit vague, right? You can always just simply say, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. Or just simply tell me more. Oh, that's awesome. Tell me more. So she tells you, for example, yeah, I went to school for accounting. Oh, accounting. Tell me more. She's going to open up about anything that she wants to talk about. And then from there, she's going to give you a lot of info where you can keep the conversation going, right? So there you have it. So those are the 12. And let's talk about before we go into the bonus, the 13th bonus, let's talk about 6 things that we should not do on dates. And that one, for those, I have them written down here for reference. So you don't want to talk about anything relating to relationships, okay? So you don't want to talk about your past relationships or establishing a relationship with her, okay? So if she brings up anything about your past relationships, you want to be vague. And if she asks you, for example, why did you break up? You could just simply say, oh, we just weren't for each other, or we just weren't compatible. So you don't want to go into details. You just want to be vague about that. And about both of you, you don't want to talk about where the relationship is going. Like, you don't want to ask, what are you looking for in a relationship? Or, anything relating to anything that says that both of you may be in a relationship. So you want her to bring that up, because if you bring it up too soon or too early for her, which most guys do, because they tend to move faster than girls, if she's not ready, she's going to feel pressure to get in a relationship with you. And you don't want to put pressure on her. You want to let her bring it up on her own when she is ready to talk about it. When she brings up the idea of a relationship, or she asks, what are you looking for? Then you can talk about, then you can be honest with her about that, but not until she brings this up. Number 3, you don't want to talk more than her. So a lot of guys just talk and talk and talk and talk about themselves, their achievements, where they went, where they went on travel, their possessions, all the cool things they've done. No, you don't want to talk more than her. You want to talk less than her if possible. At least equal, but you want to talk less. And the reason is, when people tell you more about themselves, they tend to like you more. So if she opens up to you more than you open up to her, then she's going to start to feel like she knows you. She knows you more. She knows you like a friend. She's getting closer to you. So yes, you do want to share things about you, of course, but you want to try to have her talk more than you. And also, this is a given, but a lot of guys just still do it. You don't want to argue with her. So if she mentions something that is controversial or that you don't agree with, you don't want to be confrontational. You don't want to argue. You can kindly disagree, right? And say, you know what? okay, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think this, and this. Right? So you can disagree with her, but don't argue. That's just gonna screw everything up. And your chances of being with her are gonna plummet, and you're probably not gonna get a next date. Okay, you also don't wanna talk about controversial topics. So no talking about sex, no talking about religion, no talking about politics, nothing like that. We wanna keep dates light, playful, getting to know her or each other without all the potential arguing, potential bickering, potential disconnect that you have with these controversial topics. If she brings up these topics, then you want to, again, be vague and then move the conversation along. Next one, last one for these, you don't want to make the dates too long, okay? So my deal, for me, I tend to want to keep dates for about an hour maximum. An hour each date is a great amount, and or is a good amount in terms of attraction, in terms of attraction theory, because if the date is too long, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, you're getting to know each other very, very quickly, and there's no suspense, there's no misery. It's mystery rather. And I like to think of this like a movie, right? If somebody told you the whole plot about a movie, and when you're probably not going to want to see the movie because you already know all about it. But if you go and see it, it's going to be more suspenseful. You're going to stay there. You're going to want to know more what's going to happen. And the same thing can kind of be applied here. You want to keep that suspense going and have her coming back for date 2, date 3, date 4, date 5 to get to know you little by little rather than everything all at once. Okay? And now to the 13th bonus tip on how to keep the conversation going is the question game. So anytime you feel stuck, you don't know what to ask, you don't know what to talk about, you can always say, hey, let's play a question game. You ask me a question, and then I ask you a question, and we just answer back and forth. And as long as you have a couple of questions in mind, you can ask her, you can get started. So you can just be like, hey, you know what? Let's play the question game. You start, or no, you always want to start. I'll start. And then you can ask her a question, where was the last place you traveled to? Or what was your favorite place you traveled to? Or what is the best advice somebody has given you? Anything you want to ask that's, again, not controversial, then she's going to answer. And then it's her turn. She asks you a question, and back and forth. You just kind of keep going back and forth. And that's basically never ending, right? And let's say you're on date number, and let's say that ends, your date ends, and you go on date number 2 or 3 or 4, whatever your next date is, you can always continue the question game. Be like, oh, you know what? Let's pick up on that question game. Whose turn was it? Oh, my turn? Okay, here's my question. Boom. So you can always pick it up. You feel stuck? Just bring up the question game. So there you have it. 13 ways to keep conversations going. 6 tips on things not to do on dates. Hopefully this is helpful. Let me know what you thought in the comments. If you have any ideas for future videos, also let me know in the comments. If you have any other ideas on how to keep conversations going, also let me know. All right, until next time, you guys have a great week.